Rebel News live stream. It is Thursday, July 23rd, 2020. And I know what you're saying. Normally, you're looking at the big boss man himself here, Ezra Levent, but Ezra is in Alberta working on all kinds of special projects. So in his place, it is me, David Menzies, and on the left coast, my friend and colleague, Keean Bexty. How are you doing, Keean?
I'm doing well, David, but here we don't call it the left coast. We call it Western Canada. The left coast is British Columbia.
Oh, forgive me. I thought you were already in British Columbia. I think you're up to a caper there. Is it tomorrow?
Oh, yes, but that's secret, David. We can't say what's going on yet.
Oh, my lips are sealed, you know. So, Keean, before we get in, there's so much news to discuss, including some breaking news happening right now in Toronto. This is where you chime in and tell the folks what it is we're hoping to accomplish here, in addition to talking about the news of the day.
Well, what I'm hoping to accomplish, David, is just to become even closer friends with you. That's what I hope to accomplish here today. But outside of that, I mean, the company goal is to chat with all of our friends, our viewers that enjoy our Rebel News content on YouTube. I know I love speaking with our friends here. And the best way for us to see what's going on, because the chats sort of go through so quickly, is to do a super chat. And that's YouTube's way of sort of saying it's the YouTube stream contribution program. Most of you probably know how it works. You chip in a few bucks, it helps us out, and to make sure that Ezra wants me to keep coming back to replace him. So, I mean, it's a win-win for me.
Indeed, and it's completely voluntary, folks. And unlike the mainstream media, Keean, we don't do a direct debit of Canadians' tax dollars in terms of enriching, the CBC at $1.5 billion, the newspapers at $600 million, the magazine fund, the Maclean's bailout, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's completely voluntary to you folks, and this is how we rely on bringing you the other side of the story.
So, David, I'm curious to hear what is breaking in Toronto. What am I missing here?
Yes, okay, right down to business. Why don't we run a clip? It went up on our website this morning, and it was the most recent update on the Afro-Indigenous Rising group. I know it sounds very political and, social justice-y. It's really just a bunch of bums, having a free ride, camping out in the public square. Well, they took over Nathan Phillips Square for 3 weeks. They were finally booted off the square. And what happens in Toronto, it's like a game of whack-a-mole. They just find another public place. In this case, it's Dufferin Grove Park. They've been there for, I think, at least 2 weeks. And I paid a visit, I believe it was yesterday, and here's our report. Will the city lay down the law on Thursday as they promised? Or will they get another 4-day extension or even longer? And if they do comply, what does it mean in this whack-a-mole system we got here in Toronto? Does it mean they just have to find another park? David Menzies for Rebel News here at Dufferin Grove Park in Toronto. And folks, before I get to an update on this story, please, if you can, go to journalistdefensefund.com and make a contribution. As you know, we love to bring you the other side of the story, but the fact remains, unfortunately, there are forces afoot that want to prevent us from doing so, and sometimes we need to hire security in order to practice journalism safely. And such is the case today. I can tell you behind me is the tent city. It is an autonomous zone / sacred circle. It started back in June in Nathan Phillips Square, where members of the Afro-Indigenous Rising camped out. They had just one little demand, really, of the city. Abolish, yeah, that's right, abolish, not defund, the police department. Their presence was tolerated at Nathan Phillips Square for precisely 3 weeks, at which point the city finally manned up and got these thugs off the square. And I'm not exaggerating when I use that word, folks. Check out one of our visits to the square and see how we were treated simply for practicing journalism in front of City Hall.
We're at City Hall.
What are you doing here?
We're at City Hall. It's public property. Don't touch them.
Touch me. Don't touch me. Don't do that, bro. Get out of our cabinet. Why are you here? Why are you here? You're not welcome.
We're just coming.
Interviewing, bro.
Yeah. Yo, don't touch him, man.
So as a result of our media exposure, and by the way, folks, you don't see much media coverage of this. It's not part of their narrative, or secretly the media is cheering on these kinds of anarchists and Marxists. In any event, because of our media coverage of what happened in Nathan Phillips Square, the city issued a trespass notice. They were violating 11 sections of the act. They were given 72 hours to leave. Lo and behold, when the deadline came, they were given an additional 4-day extension in which to leave, and finally they did. But when they left, you see, the thing about Toronto these days, folks, under Mayor John Tory, when it comes to tent cities, it's like a game of whack-a-mole. They left Nathan Phillips Square, and here they are at Dufferin Grove Park. Now, we came here last Friday, you may recall, and we ran into a hostile reception by some of the allies of these squatters, namely the local Champagne socialist community, who apparently like to drive late-model Mercedes-Benz vehicles. Check it out. Boy, there's a lot of angry people driving Mercedes down here today.
Get out of here.
The horn's working.
This isn't news. Get out of here.
Have you tried the headlights?
Get lost.
Huh? What?
Go.
Oh, we're on a public sidewalk, sir.
Go. Rebel News.
Yeah.
Gone.
Why is that, sir? We're on a public sidewalk.
Bunch of jerks. Bunch of racist pieces of garbage.
Oh, that's a nice Mercedes. AMG. I'm impressed. Well, after that video aired, can you imagine? The city of Toronto issued trespass. Well, there you have it, Keean. You know, it's very interesting looking at the dynamic of these social justice tent cities. For example, you have the ringleaders. They don't stay overnight in the hotels, in the tents, as we showed. They stay in luxury hotels like the Sheraton Center, where rooms start at $277. I imagine it gets quite humid given the summer we're having, and they don't want to be a sweaty Betty. Then you have the useful idiots, the pawns. These are the homeless. These are the drug addicts. These are the mentally ill people. They're just happy to be wanted by anybody. And so they are the ones placed in some of the tents, because most of the tents, contrary to what you might think, are empty. And then you have that guy in the Mercedes-Benz C-Class AMG convertible. By the way, that's over $100,000 off the lot, Keean. These are what I call the Champagne socialists. These are the types that are funding the Afro-Indigenous Rising GoFundMe page. When I last checked, it was over $49,000. It's probably higher now. And that is not really to advance the cause of social justice, but really to front the money for those pricey hotel stays. Now, what I can tell you in terms of breaking news, I have yet to confirm this, but a source tipped me off that as we're speaking, there was approximately 40 police officers at Dufferin Grove Park. So for a change, the city is actually abiding by the 72-hour deadline for trespassing and not giving these cats an additional 96 hours, in other words, 4 more days like they did at Nathan Phillips Square. How do you weigh in on this issue, Keean?
A victim. I just can't believe that there's a 72-hour waiting period. Like, why not just do it right away? Like, I don't get why. Is it John Tory's orders?
I would imagine. And I mean, it seems that the city only cares about deadlines when, I don't know, your water bill is due, your taxes are due, you got to pay a parking ticket. Oh man, like a papal bull, they'll come down on the tax-paying citizens. But when it's these bums, these derelicts, they get all kinds of notice, they get all kinds of consideration. And by the way, I don't know if you could tell, the brick building that they've set up the Sacred Circle, and what a joke that is, and what an affront to natives who do, follow the mandates of establishing a Sacred Circle. That is at the public washroom of Dufferin Grove Park. So can you imagine, Keean, you're maybe a young mother with your infant, you want to go to the washroom to take care of business, and you have to go through that? It is absolutely despicable, and they shouldn't have been there one night, let alone 2 weeks plus 72 hours notice.
I couldn't agree more. David, I'm going to go to the super chats because they're starting to pile up.
All right.
My favorite Rebel fan is Apu Baker Owl Puff Daddy. He started it off today. He said, "Good morning, K-Man and Menzoid. Keean, as a young person, do you believe that youth are becoming red-pilled conservatives, libertarians, or is the educational brainwashing too much to overcome?" That's a good question. I think in terms of like Generation Z, the Zoomers, it's more likely that they're becoming libertarians over conservatives. But when it comes to the SJW versus libertarians, I think it's a bit of a 50-50 split. Maybe 3 years ago, I would have said that they were leaning more libertarian, but now I don't know. I just have no faith in the public education system. It's been set up for years decades really. It used to be fine back like pre-Cold War, but in recent times, the public education system is a brainwashing factory to manipulate youth at the hands of public sector unions to make them little union dweebs that are about to go into university to have their final touches put on them. So, I don't know. I hope that they're more red-pilled than not, but who can really say? And then he also followed up that super chat with a question to you, David. He wants to know I don't know why he asked this, man, but he said he wants to know what your opinions are on the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Which films do you like, and what don't you like?
Well, on the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think it's become quite boring and cliche. There seems to be a template of scripts where every third line of dialogue is a joke or a humorous quip, and then they rely on a preponderance of CGI. And I've kind of tuned out, and I understand from some of the more recent films they've gone kind of social justice warrior-y. And when it comes to the superhero genre, give me the Chris Nolan Batman Begins trilogy. That to me is the gold standard. And I can tell you, if you watch the third part of that, which is Dark Knight Rises, Keean, I don't think there has ever been a more right-of-center superhero film ever produced. I mean, it came out during the time of Occupy, and it very much skews right. I don't think you could make that film today, and we're only going back to 2012 when that was originally released, I believe. That to me is the gold standard, and everything else pales by comparison because it is cliche and special effects driven. But if you haven't seen the Chris Nolan trilogy, folks, it's well worth your money.
Yeah, I have seen that actually. It is epic to say the least. It's nice when something isn't ideologically pandering for once, and it's also a good movie. So the next super chat is keep up the good work. That's Ak Jaslowski, and Zona Rosa Smith. I'm terrible with names, which is surprising because my name always gets mispronounced, and I always hate it when people do it. But I'm the worst offender when it comes to saying other people's names. Miss Smith says, or Mr. Smith, I don't know, says keep up your hard work. Much respect to you. Thank you so much for your contribution to our stream. So, David, what is next up on the docket? Well,
you know what? Why don't we talk about, because you were there, Keean, and I was not, and that was the event we had in Sherwood Park, I believe, just outside of Edmonton. And some communists, I believe, showed up to try and disrupt the event. It became unintentionally humorous, and of course that's my favorite kind of humor, Keean. So can you give us a recounting of what happened at that restaurant that was, I believe, first intimidated to cancel our event and then bribed to cancel our event, but they stood their ground, didn't they?
Yeah, so I'll start at the beginning. Basically, the restaurant that we were hosting this event at started getting calls over and over and over again from Calgary numbers, and it seems like that was organized by the consulate that is based in Calgary. They got bribes up to $3,000 to cancel the event, but they still stood fast against that, and it was great to have that kind of support. But when we actually started the event, these folks that you're seeing on the screen right now showed up, and well, they weren't happy. They had a really strange sign talking about Jews. They started shouting in the face of our guests, and Ezra, especially when he came out, just shouting him down, and they had a bit of an argument. That story, I'm not sure if we have video of that, if our camera backroom guy has video of what was going on there. It was hilarious to watch. But what was even more concerning is after we went inside to start having dinner, and you'll see it here, these two fellas came, accompanied by one other guy who sort of stayed in a vehicle, and they had an iPad that they were acting sort of as like a media group, interviewing, asking questions, collecting data, and in one case, taking pictures of someone's cell phone to confirm that they weren't racist and that they were donating to, I don't even want to go into it. They wouldn't tell us who they were with. They just said that they were media, they weren't obligated to answer our questions, and that this event was illegal and should be shut down. If anyone knew who these folks were, I would love to know them. None of our viewers probably do, though, because they had a thick Mandarin accent. I'd be surprised if they were even Canadian. They probably came straight from the consulate. They wouldn't tell us a thing about where they were from or why they were there, but they weren't happy that the event was going on.
Well, Keean, in fairness, it was illegal, and it should have been shut down had the event been carried out in, say, Beijing, right?
Yeah.
And in which case you'd be joining the two Michaels behind bars, and that's coming up to day 600, I believe. And we'll be talking about the two Michaels and what we're planning on doing for those two victims of the communist regime in China. So I guess these poor deluded souls, they think Canada is an extension of communist China. Now, I can forgive them for thinking that way. We have a prime minister who admires the basic dictatorship of China, but we're not quite there yet, and we're certainly not there yet when it comes to the province of Alberta.
Yeah, this is an example of Beijing colonialism. They're trying to expand their empire. They want the rest of the world to reflect their communist attitude and ideals. These radical, like Chinese extremists, nationalists, not only are they holding internment camps in West China, not only are they trying to expand their own territory in the South China Sea, they're also going to foreign countries and trying to expand their diplomatic strength within the government, and also creating manipulation programs trying to entrance the populations. It sounds a lot like Nazi Germany, and I know a lot of people sort of balk when they say, oh, this was just like the Nazis, this was just like the Holocaust. This is the one example, and I'm treading very lightly here, but this is the one example in modern days that is the most similar to the early days of the Nazi regime in Germany.
Oh, Keean, 100%, and you're not making much of an exaggeration when we look at how China is treating its Uyghur population. Yeah. I mean, that's Nazi Germany 101. They're being rounded up onto trains and put in concentration camps. Their slave labor is being used to make PPE product, some of which we are buying in Canada. I think that is an apropos comparison for sure. By the way, was our favorite Calgary commie, Anne McGrath, was she there, Keean?
Supporting the Chi-Coms? No. She's, I wouldn't be surprised though. She was in Ottawa. Of course, she's the new executive director of the NDP. And she's making sure that the NDP are using taxpayers' dollars to fund the salaries of their partisan employees. So she was busy doing other communist activities.
Yeah, she's with the propaganda department now. Keean, two things strike me about the event. One was, if this was indeed orchestrated by the Chinese consulate, talk about amateur hour. They got about 8 or 9 people out. They're holding cardboard staple signs. I would think with a superpower behind a protest that there'd be far more presence in terms of numbers. The signage would be far more professionally produced. But that was like something you'd see done out of an elementary school, for goodness sakes. And the second thing is, talk about the Barbara Streisand effect. Talk about the law of unintended consequences. All these dimwits did was create yet more publicity for Ezra's book, China Virus. There it is, folks. Buy it before they ban it again. I think that's our slogan for it, isn't it, Keean? And
Absolutely.
So people that never would have had awareness of this book now have that awareness, and they're buying it, and surely this will be a bestseller. Now, I think Mr. Producer has a clip of the big boss man himself addressing these protesters. Do we have some audio there, Mike? Bear with us, folks.
So basically, the lead up to this story was that Ezra comes out of the event, seeing all these protesters, and he starts standing off against the ringleader of this. I forget what his name was. I think he said it was Jonathan, but obviously that was not the case. He comes out, and Ezra starts trying to ask him questions to sort of get their side of the story. Why are you here? What do you have? What's your problem with the book? And have you read the book? And obviously they said, no, I haven't read the book. They thought that the book was inherently racist because of the title. And this is and this is why we're among other reasons certain that they came from the consulate, because the primary thing that angered the Chinese during this virus was not the millions of people that were becoming sick, not the thousands of people, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that were dying. Their problem with the virus was what it was called. And if you called it the wrong thing, if you called it the Wuhan flu, the Wuhan virus, and God forbid the China virus, well, then there was going to be hell to pay. And then you were racist. They were so concerning to them that they actually sent directives to the World Health Organization to make sure that they cut this off early, so that there was huge campaigns across the globe to make sure that nobody was being racist to Chinese folks, in particular mainland Chinese folks, Mandarin speakers, because the people around the world started blaming China for the virus, as they should have been blamed. And once Donald Trump used the term China virus, the Chinese virus, well, Beijing erupted, and the World Health Organization was condemning people left, right, and center, all, of course, at the directive of China, Beijing, CCP, and Xi Jinping himself.
And Keean, the egregious thing is the Mandarins in Beijing have gotten their way. I mean, I know Donald Trump said in a recent speech that look at the official name that we're supposed to call this virus, COVID-19. They have gone so far beyond anything to do with Wuhan or China with COVID-19. COVID-19, that sounds to me like a planet in Star Trek. It's right next door to Archer 5 or something like that. And it makes a mockery of how we've labeled diseases in the past. Lyme disease is named because it came out of Lyme, Connecticut. Is to call it Lyme disease, is that anti-Connectican, to the people there? German measles, Spanish flu. How is it suddenly that we are no longer allowed to name the disease for the origin point, which was in Wuhan, China? And by the way, this is only, the third pandemic in a row to come out of China? Mm-hmm. So it's really rich how, the Communist Party in Beijing actually gets its way, so that if you call it the Wuhan virus, and that's what I continue to call it, you are somehow a racist. But Keean, I think we have about 90 seconds of Ezra encountering these protesters.
Yeah. Let's do that.
Over the last few days, members who were sent here by the Chinese Communist Party and the embassy have threatened the shopkeeper here. Luckily, the shopkeeper did not give in. They tried to bribe the owner to cancel the event. Luckily, they did not. So I'm pleased to say that unlike in Beijing, free speech rules here. So I'm going to go in and talk to our guests, but these are people who would bring Chinese-style censorship to Canada. What I've tried to tell them, even though they swore at me and put their finger really close to my face, is that the Chinese virus I'm talking about in the book is the Communist Party of China. It's not Chinese people or history or culture or language or art or architecture. It's the Communist Party of China. When I asked them questions about their own allegiance to the Chinese Communist Party, they lost face. They started swearing and putting their finger right in my face to try and provoke me. But they're the ones who have lost face. Guys, the Communist Party is losing. They're losing in China and they're losing here. All right, I'm going to go in to be with the paying guest.
Oh, that was fantastic. By the way, Keean, I couldn't help but notice that one cardboard sign, "Stop Racism Against Chinese." When did the Chinese people become an actual race? That's what I
whenever it suits their needs, right? Like, of course, they will mention that we're probably the most loyal news outlet in Canada to the brave people of Hong Kong. I didn't realize they were specifically different ethnicity, but to them, they really are. I mean, I think that they actually think China is an ethno-state. That's why the how do you say the Uyghurs? It's either Uyghurs or Uyghurs. I can never tell. That's why they're interning them. That's why they're having instituting population control on them. And I wanted to point out one thing from that video. As Ezra was talking, in the last few seconds of that shot, you could see that guy on his cell phone sort of showing something. And if you look closely, I encourage you guys to go back to that video. It was actually a hammer and sickle. It was a picture of a hammer and sickle that he was proudly showing to the world, to Ezra specifically, and to our cameras. So, I mean, it's just stunning. These people were obviously communists. They wanted to shut down an event. It's just the most insane thing that they came all the way from wherever they came from. I presume it was Calgary, from the consulate.
Go ahead again.
I was just going to say I would catch up on Super Chats, but if you had something to add on, I'll just do that after you.
One last point to end with an exclamation here, in case anyone thinks that we are anti-Chinese in terms of Chinese people. One of the most wonderful moments in this company's history, I think, was a few years ago when my cameraman Efren and I went to the lawns of Queen's Park on a cold winter day, and there were something like 600 demonstrators, most of whom were Chinese, who were protesting the hijab hoax. You may recall, Keean, the young Muslim girl who said that an Asian had, with a pair of scissors, had chopped up her hijab. It was proven to be a complete fabrication, and they were maligned. And I will never forget the chant that they started on the lawns of Queen's Park as they marched down University Avenue: "Rebel media, real news, CBC fake news." And as a matter of fact, a CBC news van was going down University. I wish we had it on camera. It was so brief that we didn't catch it. Hit the brakes. Hey, what's this? They read some of the signage, and man, did they step on the gas pedal like Batman rushing to the Joker. I mean, that sort of stuff, that's kind of right-wing stuff. That doesn't fit our narrative. And so there was no coverage of perhaps the most important news event happening on that Sunday in Toronto that day. Absolutely incredible. So we are not anti-Chinese, and in fact, we have thousands of Chinese subscribers and supporters. Anyways, Keean, could you please get to some of those super chats?
Sure. So Michael Lefebvre says, "Third day in a row, where's Ezra?" He's really worried that Ezra's not here. Well, I think now's the opportunity for us to start a conspiracy. I don't know. What do you think, David?
Well, a lot of people don't know that we actually have an Ezra Levant body double. So sometimes when you see Ezra, that's not the real Ezra. It's just to throw the bad guys off his trail.
There's also the one that people are talking about right now. Justin Trudeau is on house arrest. I remember there was a ton of people who sent me. I don't laugh, David. People actually thought that Justin Trudeau was under house arrest, and they were serious. They saw something on his foot. stepping down the stairs from Rideau Cottage. And that morning, I got about 50 messages from folks saying, Keean, you got to look into this. Justin Trudeau was actually on house arrest. He committed a crime. And I understand that people are eager to get him, to really stick it to him. But this wasn't it, guys. He was not on house arrest.
And Keean, I would make the argument that Justin Trudeau would like to be under house arrest because he's loving the Wuhan virus lifestyle. He's in that cottage of his. It's the furthest thing from a cottage I've ever seen. And I don't know what he's doing, playing Grand Theft Auto and probably imbibing with his bong. And every day, not even every day anymore, coming out for an 11 a.m. presser where the hard-hitting journalists ask him, what kind of shampoo are you using, Mr. Prime Minister? And are you worried about burnout? That's my favorite one from Reuters. Are you worried about burnout? He's basically living the life of a zombie,
Yeah,
So this, as so many millions of Canadians are champing at the bit to get back to work, he would be fine if this carried on for years, Keean.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. So not only did Justin Trudeau, to sort of follow along with this line here, not only did Justin Trudeau take a personal day on Monday, the day that the House of Commons returned back to work, the day, 2 days, he called the House of Commons back on Saturday. That's the bare minimum you need to call every MP from across the country to work. 2 days. He did it. On Monday, he's like, yeah, too much for me. I was talking about everyone else. He stayed at home. He took a personal day. The next day, he took private meetings. That's his alternative thing on his itinerary. It's either personal days or private meetings. And today is the same thing. Private meetings is what Justin Trudeau was doing. What does that even mean to the Prime Minister? What kind of meeting is private? What are you doing that is private? It's either a cabinet meeting, and sure, I understand it's a closed meeting, but Canadians should be aware that you're still doing your job. Private meetings, I don't know why the journalists in the mainstream media are all right with this amount of information being given to them. Donald Trump's every single second of his life is documented and sent to the library archives and made public to everyone to see. For Justin Trudeau, he just says private meetings. I'm out, guys. Grand Theft Auto. I gotta go meet a car dealer in Grand Theft. Yeah, it's stunning that they let him off.
It is staggering. I mean, you made me laugh out loud when you used the term personal day. He needs a personal day to recover from 120 personal days in a row, which is in effect what he's had since this virus lockdown began in mid-March. Absolutely staggering, but carry on with the super chats, my friend.
Curtis G says, you rock, Ezra. Well, I'll be sure to let him know. Cindy Mick just gave a picture of a dinosaur with a backwards hat and a thumbs up. Right back at you, Cindy. Then another question is, Keean, would you ever consider becoming a male model?
Ooh. Well, would you, Keean? And what would you model?
I don't know. I could be like a hand model. I don't know if you can see it. I have really nice fingers. So I mean, maybe if this rebel thing doesn't pan out, this journalism shtick, I'll be like a hand model. I could do male jewelry or something. Tall walls. I agree with that. Just in general, just a $25 donation. Nothing to say. I guess tall walls is the message. Wendy's Cafe says, good morning to you too. Keean, you need to line your walls with egg cards or something. You're echoing really bad this morning. I just can't catch a break in this godforsaken cubicle that I live in. I'm either in my living room and the lighting is terrible, and the lighting isn't even great here. I'm stuck at home, and streaming is not my day job, but you're right. I know that there's an echo. This is like my gaming area, so hence the headset. So maybe you're right. I'll call Ezra and I'll get those foam walls that we get in the studio inside. Maybe that'll help with the echoing.
Yeah, cut Keean a break, folks. You know how hard it is being a male model these days?
Yeah, God. Canada stand on guard for these our duty to vote criminals out democracy. My dad freaked out when Pierre Elliott Trudeau was attacked. He heard it all. When PET was, that must be Pierre Elliott Trudeau was elected. He heard it all. I believe, Patriot. Pierre Elliott Trudeau, like father like son, Justin Trudeau is as much of a crook as every liberal that has predated him, including his father. I just keep thinking about Bev Oda, who resigned because she expensed a $16 orange juice. $16. That's really, and these days, that's like 2 Starbucks.
Maybe
it's
just
not
1.5.
Yeah, it's not actually that much. But she resigned in disgrace because the mainstream media would never let up. There was so little scandal under the Harper government that was what they found. Oh, and also when a high-level staffer in the PMO reimbursed the taxpayer purse, I think it was $10,000. They thought that was a scandal because he voluntarily paid the Receiver General of Canada. It doesn't make sense. But when it comes to Bill Morneau taking $41,000 to go on a luxury vacation to Ecuador and Kenya for his family, and then Justin Trudeau giving almost $1 billion back to them to reward them for paying off his wife, who has nothing to do because they got a nanny to watch their kids, so she's not doing jack squat. And then his mom, who's in the exact same situation, to reward them, he's paying them off. And that's not criminal. That is criminal. That's the definition of criminal.
And in the case of Morneau, Keean, it is staggering to me, a man of such immense wealth. I know he's a multimillionaire. I'm not sure if he's a billionaire or not. He might be. But to take a $41,000 trip, which, let's face it, that is the annual salary for many Canadians. And forget about it, much like he forgot on his last ethics violation to declare his chateau in France. Oops. Don't you hate that, Keean, when you forget to declare your chateau and your $41,000 vacations, right? And yet, this is a man of privilege. The Liberals, and the left, they're always going on about privilege. Bill Morneau is one of the most privileged people in this country, given his corporate wealth. And for him to dip into that trough, I guess greed, when you get to that level, Keean, it doesn't matter how much you have, you're insatiable. I'm reminded of that James Bond movie title, The World Is Not Enough. There is no excuse for him to be doing that.
And here's what's confusing to me, David, is not only am I surprised, or maybe I shouldn't be surprised, but not only do I find it crazy that someone could be so wealthy that $41,000, give or take, doesn't matter to them. I don't believe it. I mean, he said it was an accident. That's BS. That's horseshit, really. What I find so surprising is that the We Charity allowed that money to be missing. Any charity in existence scrounges for every dollar that they get. Whether it's $1 or $1,000, they're happy to get it. This was $41,000 that was missing from their books. They would follow up if they wanted to. This was obviously a gift. It was obviously on purpose, and Bill Morneau is culpable in this.
Yeah. Oh, but Keean, $41,000 when it comes to We and Kielburgers. I mean, come on, that you could find $41,000 probably in loose change in the sofa. As the inventory of their assets comes to light, such as $47 million in Toronto real estate they've squirreled away this charitable money into. $41,000, my friend, is chump change.
Yeah, I suppose you're right. The Kielburger brothers and their conglomerate, the Kielburger conglomerate of We organizations, from Me to We, their for-profit arm, to We Charity and everything in between, and the real estate venture that's part of it that somehow got almost $1 billion to give to young kids for volunteering. It's just such a strange, it's a spider web. And the problem here is, it took the mainstream media, it took all 10 of their brain cells to focus on Bev Oda and the $16 orange juice. Oh, how are we going to trust them to be able to pull this all apart? Rebel News can't do it all. I mean, we've done some of it, but our budget is about 1% of the CBC's, I think, maybe less than that. How are we supposed to be doing that? We've broken a lot of stories about the We Charity, and I think my favorite one was the one that I did about finding that the Kielburger brothers were financiers of Justin Trudeau's leadership election. They've been buddies from the start. But that was one thread in this blanket of lies. And the mainstream media is just going to forget about this as soon as it's convenient. They already want to talk about the governor general, like that matters to people, that she was mean to maybe a staffer or two. I don't care. I care about my prime minister. I care about my minister of finance who's driving this country into debt.
But, you know, Keean, in the big picture, and I've talked about this with our colleague, Sheila Gunn-Reid, in the big picture, I don't think this is going to amount to the proverbial hill of beans when it comes to whenever the next federal election is. I can see the Justin Trudeau Liberals skating on this scandal much like they've skated on so many scandals. I think part of the problem is a disengaged electorate. Another part of the problem is, well, he was trying to do the right thing, kind of. It's a charity, you know. And the third thing is, like, who is, you know, brand B in terms of the Conservative Party, who the potential leader will be. This is the perfect storm for this party to perhaps get even a majority in the next election. Who knows? That's what I can see happening, Keean. Or do you have a differing opinion? Do you think the stench with this me to we scandal is going to be, they won't be able to recover from it?
I think that this scandal is worse than SNC Lavalin, but I still don't think that it's enough to dethrone Justin Trudeau, because he's rigged the game. He's rigged it perfectly. He's rigged the media, and he's rigged the electorate. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Paying off the media is one thing, but his programs to fill the electorate, specifically in locations that tend to vote Conservatives, be it south of Calgary in rural Alberta, be it in the BC interior near Vernon, British Columbia, or the other 12 zones that they've specifically targeted to backfill the population with new immigrants and refugees, tens of thousands of them in each case. Yep. There's no way that a Conservative government is going to be able to hold on to those seats or form government, because Justin Trudeau has so successfully manipulated the two things that it takes to form government: a friendly media and a friendly electorate.
I am afraid you are 100% right, Keean. More super chats, my friend.
Yes. Okay. Wendy's Cafe. I might have done that one already. David, you have one specifically here for you. Someone says they tagged you on Twitter with a video of Toronto's Dufferin Grove Park squatters being met by police. Today is their trespassing deadline. Yeah, we just talked about that. But David, you might want to check that out on Twitter. If you're tagging that video, it might be some good footage that you can chat with that guy about. Kathy says, thanks for Tuesday, Ezra, Sheila, and Keean. David, I hope to see you at a live event. Okay, so they want you to come to the next one, David. We actually talked about David there. We said we should have shipped him out, but I think you might have been busy that evening. And Keean Tim says, hi, Tim. It was nice to meet you. It was nice to meet you in Sherwood Park. Now, Americans believe Trump started the virus, and that it will be gone right after the election in November. I'm not sure what angle you're saying that from, whether it's incredulity or if you think that. I mean, if you think that the Americans are sort of being brainwashed by the DNC into thinking that, I would agree with that. I think all normal thinking people know that the virus was started in China by the communist Chinese Communist Party.
Well, you know, Keean, if I may weigh in, I think one of the biggest problems in the U.S. is their version of the media party and how everything is through the election lens, including a global pandemic. And I can tell you, a few weeks ago, I was at the bookstore, I was at the magazine rack, and I saw the latest issue of Mother Jones, which is a left-wing rag. It's not worth reading, but it was behind another magazine, so I saw it was the Wuhan virus, that red virus microbe, forming a crown, like a king's crown. So I reached over to it and lifted it up because I'm thinking, it's got to be some high-ranking official of the Chinese Communist Party wearing that Wuhan virus crown, but lo and behold, it was Donald Trump. That is the kind of warped, malicious media coverage Trump and his administration is receiving. That somehow he is the king of this virus, that the Trump administration released this virus upon the world. It's absolutely despicable, Keean.
Yeah, I don't. You never know what people are going to fall for these days, though, David. If I was to, analyze this politically for Trump, I'd say that he is the only politician in the world who this has negatively affected. In Canada, Trudeau's numbers have soared. In Europe, most leaders' numbers have increased. Even Boris Johnson, through certain scandal, has done better, even though he just won with a majority government, so it's clear that he was already well-liked in the eyes of the British public. He even started grabbing the support of moderates and some leftists for his sort of adamant support of their NHS, their equivalent of the Canadian healthcare system. So, he's doing well. Everyone's doing well. The only person that's not is Donald Trump. He wants this virus to go away yesterday. It's not helping him at all. So Mark says, mask bylaws force disabled people to defend themselves against or employees, authorities, the public, aka Karens, or to further isolate themselves. Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true. Some folks are unable to put the masks on themselves. That's just something that they can't physically do if their hands are encumbered, if they have severe cerebral palsy, if they're paraplegic, quadriplegic. It's just not something that they can do well routinely. It's unfair to them to sort of get this stern look and be isolated from the world because of this mandatory rule. It's not fair to them at all. It's not fair to anyone to be forced to have that mask forced on them, because there could be any number of reasons that you can't have a mask, whether it's being able to physically put it on or not. It could be severe anxiety as well. Whatever your problem is, the government shouldn't be telling you what you can and cannot wear. Wendy's Cafe says, no way, David. Trudeau and Murno are getting their lies together so that they can spew them before the ethics community and when they are forced to testify, which I hear Justin Trudeau actually agreed to doing. It's a real shame that committees here in Canada are not as huge as the ones in the United States. In the United States, and I've been there in Congress and in the House of Representatives and in the Senate, their congressional hearing rooms are these huge, magnificent things with curtains and wallpaper that goes up 50 feet high. They're just these magnificent rooms, and it feels important. Here in Canada, there's just these garbage rooms in this secondary House of Commons. And in this case, because during the pandemic, nobody's actually there, Trudeau's going to be testifying from his living room, which doesn't really, there's no Canadians, when they see that, it doesn't seem serious as much as it is, as much as he's going to have to swear an oath to say that he's saying the truth, nothing but the truth, and the whole truth. It's not going to have that sort of political sway, I think, during the election.
And Keean, what is the highest penalty when it comes to an ethics violation? $500? Oh boy, I bet Bill Murno is shaking in his Gucci's thinking about coughing up 5 brownies if he's found to be in violation of the ethics committee. What a joke.
Yeah, I mean, this is the same guy that accidentally thought that he paid $41,000, $500, and I don't even think it's that much. I think it's like $300. Maybe a second-time offense is more. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, there needs to be serious rearrangement of our ethics laws, because as they exist now, when the Laurentian elite are in power, it doesn't really do anything. When Stephen Harper was in power, if one of his ministers had to pay $500, I mean, still, for a minister who's making $150,000 a year, maybe a little bit more, $500 isn't a lot. But it's more to someone who came into the job as a middle-class man than it is for someone who has a trust fund. But still, I think any prime minister or minister should be facing serious fines. almost, I would say, tens of thousands of dollars for doing that, and even prison time if it's of the magnitude of this scam. Giving $1 billion to a friendly organization on a no compete contract is just stunning. I got to get through the rest of these though, David, before we get to the end of the stream. So, Murray Lilly says, "Good work, Rebel News. Do you think that Lil Potato, sexually assaulted when he was a teacher, will the lady who Little Potato sexually assaulted when he was a teacher will ever come forward and tell her story? Also, why is Sockboy wearing an anklet?" Yeah, there we go. That's what I was talking about. I don't know if he sexually assaulted anyone when he was a teacher. There's no, and just to make sure that I don't get sued by the Prime Minister, we don't have evidence that says he ever did that. So, I mean, I don't know if anyone is ever going to come forward. If you're talking about the woman in South Carolina who he had his hands on her breast while he was wearing blackface or brownface, I tried to talk to her. I flew to South Carolina to talk to her. I stood outside of her house. David did as well. Yep. I think she was gone. She was away when David was there. She just happened to be having some sweet tea on her porch when I was there. She was not in the talking mood at all. No. So I have a feeling that either they're still very close friends or she's worried that there might be some retribution if she does talk.
Oh, and Keean, lest you forget, remember you and I teamed up last September to go to that school in Vancouver. Both of us went there. And that was surreal because you had the media affairs person for the school come out saying no comment, buzz off, and she left in her. I've never seen anything like this, Keean. I don't know if you have either. There was that nice guy. I felt sorry for him. He was the maintenance guy driving the pickup truck around, cleaning up around the school, and he was left to come on camera with us. I felt so mortified for him because, he was being thrust into the role of what she should be doing as the spokeswoman for that school. There he is there. So let it be said, we went to great lengths to try to get, as we always say, the other side of the story, to find out if anyone would come on camera and name names and dates. But apparently there's the cone of silence has descended, Keean?
Yeah, David, this wasn't even the other side of the story. This was just the story that the mainstream media just wasn't reporting on. We weren't being contrarian or anything. We were just getting the facts that the mainstream media completely neglected. Because you might remember during that election, not only in this specific instance of what was Trudeau doing at West Point Grey Academy, but also the whole story of the blackface. So there was the sexual assault allegations from, really some were unfounded, some seem to have more weight to them. But then there was the blackface on the other side. The Canadian media didn't report on any of it until they sort of felt forced to. It was Time in the United States that actually released this information back at the onset of the election.
And Keean, it's even worse than you're framing it, because one of the narratives of the media party here in Canada was going after the man who released the photo to Time in the U.S., saying, why did you do this? Why did you, so it was, I think, a combination maybe of professional jealousy that they didn't get the photo leaked to them, because this guy probably thought rightly that they would bury it. And secondly, it's how dare you make things difficult for Trudeau with just 6 weeks to go in an election campaign. Yeah. I mean, it was brutal, Keean. It was just absolutely brutal.
Sometimes I just can't believe that actually happened. This whole thing happened.
There it is on CBC.
Actually painted his whole body black, all the way down to his tongue. There's the one video of him doing the sort of the monkey dance and sticking his tongue out, and he painted his tongue black. And he also seemed to have some sort of phallic-like object in his pants at the time. And it makes you wonder if he was so insecure about what he was packing that he had to put something in his pants to sort of to be racist against black people in the first place, but also to compensate for himself. He's a prime minister, David. Yeah. He's a prime minister, and nobody cared.
And how perverse, oh, there it is. I can't get that footage out of my head. And Keean, how perverse is it that last month, and I reported on this for Rebel News, that a park not very far from where I live, actually, a Pierre Elliott Trudeau statue, overnight somebody gave it the blackface treatment by spraying some black spray paint on it. And the York Regional Police are investigating that as a hate crime. Well, where's the hate crime investigation for Justin Trudeau? That's what I want to ask. But
David, I cannot wait. I cannot wait for statues of Justin Trudeau to start being put up. I cannot wait, because you can bet that at least every fiscal quarter I will be there with a bucket of paint to make sure that the world remembers who Justin Trudeau really was.
Hey, Mr. Producer, make sure you erase this footage. It'll be used as incriminating evidence in the future against Keean Bexte.
To all law enforcement watching this, this is not an admission of guilt to any crimes that I may or may not commit. All right, so for the remainder of these super chats, I'll sort of try and get through these because I know that we are at 11. But we started early. We can go a little bit late. Okay. We started a little bit late. We can go a little bit late. So, hey, Keean, can you say my surname better than Sheila? Lol. Great journalism is worthy of great support. Thank you so much. Okay, so Patricia Maskey? Maskey? It's Masci. I don't know, David. What did Sheila say?
I only know the I before E rule.
Yeah, it's too much for me, Patricia. I'm sorry. But I appreciate the support. I'll go with final answer, Maskey. That's what I'm going with. All right, so Wendy's Cafe comes in again, says, thanks, David, you're exactly right. I have several posts on social media blaming Trump for the virus. I've seen several posts on social media blaming Trump for the virus. They're saying he conspired with China. Yeah, okay. These are people who are saying that obviously are just desperate to blame Trump for something. Yeah. And I encourage you to go educate them and send them a few Rebel News links. The Chinese Communist pandemic, the CCP, it started in Wuhan at the hands of the communists because of either negligence or malice. We don't know which of those two things they are yet, but it's one of the two, and Donald Trump had nothing to do with it. Cindy Mix says, nailed it, Keean and David. Thanks to all at the Rebel.
Thank you.
Now, I appreciate that, and I think I got through every single super chat there. So I will hand it off to you, David.
Fantastic. Well, I see it is indeed past 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and normally what Ezra does at the end of his show, he ends it with a funny dog video. Well, I don't want to be copycats of Ezra, so we thought we would end the show with a funny eagle video. But before I do, I just want to say thank you to my co-host, Keean Bexte. I want to say thank you to the producers, Mike and Efren. And I want to give a special thanks to all those super chatters. We really do depend on your generosity. So thank you ever so much for being generous, especially in these dark, dire times. And without further ado, let's watch the funny eagle video.
Wow. It sure looks like he had a plan, doesn't he? I would say he's a loser.